It's really at your fingertips. It's been the most accessible that it's ever been, at least in my lifetime. Instead of, putting your head in the sand, the world's changing. It's time to change with it.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to have Ben Tasker join me to talk about all things AI. Ben is a bit of a guru when it comes to AI, and he's here to share his perspective on how the technologies that are sort of encompassed by AI can help us to perform better in our daily lives. Ben, first question, who is Ben Tasker?
Thanks for having me, Lee. I'm an AI expert. I have over 10 years of experience with AI, creating technical applications and non-technical applications. I really specialize in workforce upskilling and reskilling. So what does that mean? So in the world of AI, things are becoming exponential. There's a lot of change going on. So I specialize in helping companies create learning plans and skills-based opportunities for their employees to learn AI and embrace it to amplify their human abilities. Thanks for having me.
To amplify their human abilities. Thanks for the introduction. To amplify their human abilities. So there's this polarization going on, Ben, of either AI is going to help us do our job better or it's going to replace us. And in fact, I don't think it's an or, I think it's an and. What are your thoughts on that?
I consider right now the AI between times. We're really not in the future yet, and we're really not out of the past. And I want listeners to understand that in this between times, we're going to get a lot wrong, and we just started them. So it doesn't really matter what we're doing today. It's really the end state, and I do think the end state is going to be quite good. But we're going to have that AI gotcha moment, like something really bad happened, maybe we need to reverse this. But to your point, I do think that companies are really investing a lot into AI, which is going to cause some disruption. But with that disruption, I think that it's a perfect opportunity to focus on individual upskilling and reskilling. That way you're ready to embrace the future. And whether you're doing AI or not, you're really amplified to perform all. And everyone just needs to understand we're in that exponential change and growth period. They happen every 50 or so years. And I think we're finally in that moment.
Or in tech, maybe every 20 years or 10 years or 5 or next week. I don't know. So are we going to have one of those gotcha moments of, I can't let you do that, Dave, right? Where the AIs have decided what we should be doing and not doing?
I think initially we might get there, but in this between times, it's going to be rapid adoption, mistakes, and probably displacement. But with that becomes new jobs. For example, prompt engineering, that really didn't exist 2 years ago. Now it exists at a technical level. So there's professionals that train chatbots on how to interact with you. And then there's also non-technical people that can prompt engineer, individuals like yourself or some of your listeners that use the tools, I call it applied AI, to get what they need out of it and create things, draft things, research things. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And even with the disruption, I mean, let's just think about it like one step out. So let's pretend like in the total, I guess, negative point of view or alternative point of view, AI replaces everybody. So companies now aren't going to have that many employees. What happens to the government? How are they going to collect taxes? How are societies going to function if everybody's unemployed? I know we're not thinking about that yet, but eventually I think the government's going to catch on that, okay, maybe we do need to regulate this a little bit, or companies are going to catch on, hey, if we don't have employees that we're paying, we actually can't sell any products. Like, it's a supply and demand issue. So that's why, for me, I do think that at the end of this tunnel, there's light there. There'll be new jobs. Maybe you're working for yourself. It's a lot easier with AI to start your own business than solo. And there's a lot of information at the AI. It disseminates information much more quickly, which is why focusing on upskilling and reskilling probably has never been easier.
Right. Personally, I found it to be incredibly powerful. I use ChatGPT for a handful of different fairly complex tasks. For instance, I use this as an example as opposed to an actual need. I asked ChatGPT if I'm thinking about an AI-enabled sales training platform, which ones should I consider? What are the features and benefits of each one? What should I be thinking about in terms of actually deploying one of these? And who are the top vendors I should look at? And I got a pretty sophisticated response back. There was a top 10 list, a handful of companies I did recognize and was familiar with, including Seismic, and some companies I had never heard of before. And then ChatGPT said, would you like me to prepare an RFP for you? And I said, Nah, not now. But I think about the person in the next office over putting together, some initial thoughts on a new system for whatever, going through the same process and going to a first conversation with potential suppliers, being that much more prepared and educated about what they might need and what the strengths and weaknesses of those platforms are. It puts the user in the driver's seat, right? And it can put the vendor on the back foot if they're not as ready to respond with a really strong response, and not just with information, but guidance on how to move forward.
Right, AI is really great at disseminating, like I was explaining before. You can brainstorm with it, create, research, summarize. It's all right there. You just need to know how to interact with it. One trade-off with the AI, though, and every technology has a trade-off, is it can become hyper-personalized. So it's going to tell you, it's a recommendation system. These algorithms are just going to tell you what you think you want to know. So even if you're doing a SWOT analysis or an RFP with these tools, it might give you a little bit of bias versus if I did the same sort of prompting and analysis, I might get a different tool set. Also, outside of platforms and everything, I just want individuals listening to know you can interact with ChatGPT, you can have conversations with it. You don't need a platform to do any of the things that you just described. The AI tool itself, is a great first step to get into it, and then from there you can find more advanced platforms.
This is the simple OpenAI prompt for $20 a month. Nothing sophisticated there. One factor that concerns me is I mostly coach and work with enterprise field salespeople selling complex technology solutions or services. And what I value and instill and inspire and help promote with those salespeople, and I have been over the past many, many years, is I want them to be curious. I want them to create a point of view. I want them to be able to have a peer-to-peer conversation with a senior executive at any one of their organizations. Now, that takes some planning, it takes some research, it takes some thought. The good news is today, I can go to ChatGPT, I can go to one of 100 sales preparation platforms and put in the company name and get back a full dossier on that organization and where their pain points are. And I can do that literally in the Uber on the way to the appointment. And I've seen salespeople do that. The upside is that's possible. The downside is that information is not internalized. It's not turned into a point of view. And so a quick cursory read of that prep doesn't really help the rep be prepared for a deep conversation with pivots. Customer says, that's interesting, but what I really need to talk about is this. Whoops. So I think that's a social gotcha that's going to catch a lot of people out if we count on too much information and not enough deliberate practice, as my friend Jonathan Mahan calls it from the Practice Lab. He joined on the podcast a year or so ago. In professional sports, this is a soapbox that I'm climbing on right now. In professional sports, the typical athlete spends anywhere between 90 to 95, maybe 98% of their time not competing. They spend most of their active time practicing. Same thing with doctors, for instance, or lawyers. They spend 70 or 80% of their time prepping and researching and practicing. Even doctors practice, at least they do on Grey's Anatomy, and they spend 5 or 10 or 20% of the time actually delivering their services or doing whatever it is they do. In sales, it's very different. The goal for the salesperson is to spend all of their time selling. Where's the time for the deliberate practice? So Ben, you say in response, well, you can do deliberate practice with an AI platform. Absolutely. Tell me more. How do we get salespeople to have that deliberate practice? If I'm a sales leader, what should I be thinking about in terms of how do I get my salespeople to hone their skills?
With sales, like you're trying to explain, there's probably a lot of different avenues for these conversations to go. And very quickly, you can set up AI tools to have different personalities, different personas. So if you're selling medical appliances or devices, you can set up maybe a physician chatbot to interact with. You can set up maybe an administrator chatbot to interact with, a more difficult, less maybe someone that gets really excited in an easier type of sell. And the employees can kind of go on their own journey and practice with that and help prepare for those unknowns. But before you even start practicing, you really need to understand your own skill set and your team's skill set. And that's why I think it's really important to create those learning plans where there's a list of skills that maybe myself and my team are really good at, and then trying to figure out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with AI, what are we lacking? And then how can we find those gaps? You don't necessarily have to interact with AI to fill in the gaps that your team or yourself are lacking. You could find mentorship opportunities. So are there other experts in the field that can help teach you this quickly, and AI can help you find those folks? Are there training programs that we can quickly do, or that most people do? Are there cross mentorships or pollination opportunities on the team? So does Johnny have an ability that Susie needs, and they can work together for a complex project that maybe as a manager I didn't really think about that opportunity, but you can connect the dots that way. So by upskilling and reskilling, you can actually amplify areas that you're weak at, which is why I call it amplification, and get even better at the areas that you're strong at, similar to that sports player, that doctor, that lawyer. 80% of most people's time probably is prepping. They just don't realize it. And then once you get out into the battlefield or the real world or that Super Bowl, you're ready to perform. And you can adapt to those situations probably much more quicker on the fly. AI can enable that skill transfer usually. So to learn a new skill, and once you learn it, it lasts for 5 years. With AI, it's probably diminished to 2 years or less because everything's at your fingertips. So by constant learning, curiosity, always trying. I know those are cliche things to focus on, but in this exponential time of growth and change, by constantly doing that and assessing your learning plan, you're able to conquer any challenge that's in front of you.
One of the things that you bring to mind is the incredible power of an AI-based platform that's so totally different from a traditional learning management system, is the ability for the platform to do contextual analysis. This person is strong in this skill, this person is weaker in this skill. An LMS might take that at a gross level. Oh, you're a rep with 3 years. This is what we're going to feed you. You're a new inside sales rep. This is what we're going to feed you. The AI-based training platforms that I've seen for salespeople very quickly adapt to where the rep is at in terms of their level of capability, right? Are they consciously competent? Are they unconsciously competent? Do they have a weakness dealing with objections? And so they can, in real time, adjust. Sounds to me like you've got some experience in learning systems generally. Let's take a deeper dive into that. What do we think the opportunity is, right? How much more powerful will these systems get? And again, as a user or as a manager of users or as a buyer of systems, what should I be thinking about?
The oil of any AI system is the data. So for me, I'm a data scientist by trade. I always think about what kind of data can we get from this learning platform or learning management system? And is that data valuable for me and my team? So if it doesn't, that's without AI, but you meet with your team and you think about some of the things that you want in these platforms. And then you can kind of do a roadshow to see what these different, based upon what the AI gave back to you, what can these things actually do and how do we benefit from it? Once you understand the data and the benefit, the personalization or the custom learning journey is probably the second most important feature. So if you don't have adaptable content, or if it can't really understand the individuals that you're trying to upskill and reskill, you just have an AI system-based traditional learning platform. So they just slapped AI onto it and they didn't really think about that ecosystem. Also, I know we're focusing on sales, but are there other skills outside of that domain that maybe a little bit of AI skills, prompt engineering to get better to interact? Yeah, that's a STEM skill, not probably taught in a lot of sales programs, but it's super critical.
Not today, probably tomorrow.
So what recommendations? Right, AI is a recommendation. So you have this catalog. Here's a recommendation of things that you can do. Also, people probably don't like learning the same way all the time. So can it adapt to the individual? Maybe we do some case studies. Maybe it recommends a project in another department. Maybe it recommends a learning path, like externally from the platform, that they should investigate. There's a lot of opportunities with it. It's just how personalized can it get? And does that fit the employee? Are they actually going to grow with it? Is it too personalized where it's not going to give you tips and suggestions?
So I just heard another great takeaway, and that was the buyer, the key stakeholders can't just buy something off the shelf and install it and send the link out to all of the team and say, okay, go at
I
it.
wish it was that easy.
Yes. And you can do that, right? But the system is going to be relatively ignorant of the specific rubrics that the stakeholders want to cover. And so the opportunity is for those stakeholders to say, these are the key learning points we want to land. These are the skills we want to build. This is our ICP, our ideal customer profile. This is their language of value. This is what they care about. This is how we want to position our products or services. And now what you're building in to the system is very much of a customized learning path for anyone that engages with it, following the organizational bias or organizational guidelines of here's how we want people to do things. Here are the issues they're going to run into. I use this example. What percentage of time spent painting actually involves holding a paintbrush? Ideally, 10%, right? What do you do when you paint a room? Well, the first thing you do is you pick a color, you buy the paint, you mix the paint, you move furniture around, you put drop cloths down, you put a swatch on the wall, you go, nope, you go back to the store, you buy more paint, you sand, you spackle, you sand, you spackle, you prime, and then you paint, right? So most of painting involves not painting. Same thing with doing anything that really has value. Most of selling involves not selling. It involves preparing to sell. Most of delivering an LMS really involves setting it up so it's got the right rubrics and the right content and the right bias and the right point of view so that people get the right learning points landed. Probably a general statement that you get out what you put in.
I also think organizations are underestimating that systems mindset. So understanding your processes in the systems.
Yep.
Where that AI, gotcha moment is probably going to come in because they're moving a little bit faster than even they understand. But for AI to be able to do anything, you have to understand your current process in correct form from front to end. So if you think your sales process is mapped out as A, but it's really B, and you train AI on A, it's never going to be able to learn B, which is the correct way. So it's actually improperly training you. And that's a human problem. The AI can't define the processes, right? It can give you recommendations, but if it doesn't know, right, it doesn't know.
So the jobs of the future, process expertise and data integration specialists.
Systems thinkers.
Systems thinkers, right. Enterprise architects, looking at what are the resources we have, what are the goals we want to achieve.
It's really change management.
Absolutely. So for you, Ben, what is change management?
It's being able to help quantify this exponential period into what I would like to consider makes it more manageable for humans to understand. So by being able to break down who's responsible for it, who's accountable, who's informed, who are we collaborating with, mapping out our processes, being able to think about it as a process and a system versus finances over here, and they interact with talent acquisition sometimes over here, and they interact with the marketing department almost never, but thinking about your organization more in that ecosystem. It's not just in placing the AI to create the change. You have to change the people and the organization around with it.
Right. So the issue of change management isn't talked about a lot in sales, and change management is what sales is all about, right? We're asking our customers to make a change, and how we get them to make the change is twofold. One, we talk to them about the future goal. That's their future goal, hopefully, not our future goal. The salesperson's future goal is to book the deal. Customer doesn't give a crap about that. What the customer cares about is meeting their OKRs or their management objectives or improving productivity or whatever. And then there has to be behavior change, right? So setting the goal and letting the people involved know there's a behavior change that has to happen. First, you have to think about doing things differently. Second, you have the opportunity to evaluate, will that be better? And then third, what are the different behaviors associated with this new approach, right? We're going to have different systems. We're going to have to learn new things. We're going to have to move information around. We're going to have to re-educate people, retrain people. And so change management, again, from my perspective, is what sales is all about. And I think where we've lost the tagline so far is people are enamored with the shiny object. Oh, we're going to go and AI enable something, right? Some deliverable, right? Sales intelligence. But there's no systems thinking. The systems thinking has to be, we're going to grab information from a variety of sources, whether it's CRM or phone calls or email. We're going to put it in context with the customer information that comes out of our systems of record. And we're going to run outside research to figure out who's in market and what do they care about. And then we're going to feed that to the salesperson. And then we're going to evaluate how'd they do. And then we're going to reinforce their learnings. We're going to maybe do some behavior modification. We're going to educate them on slightly different approaches. And so, again, Ben, the number one takeaway from this conversation is systems thinking. There has to be systems thought involved.
And continual learning.
And continual learning, absolutely. Systems thinkers, data integration, and continual learning. So we've got our theme. We've got our title. So what else should we talk about, Ben? What else is on your mind when you're thinking about the commercialization of AI technologies and AI capabilities?
I know a lot of folks out there are probably scared about using AI if you haven't done so yet. I know that on the news, there's more negative press about AI than there is positive press. If you haven't used an AI tool, it doesn't matter what it is. Create a free account, go out there, try it. You can do something fun. Learning can be fun. Have it plan a 3-day vacation for you. Have it plan your trip to Disney this summer. Have it plan a holiday gathering, down the road. Whatever the case may be, just start interacting with the tool. You don't have to pay the $20 just to see what it's like. And then try to figure out how you can apply it to your job and your work domain and areas that you want to upskill and reskill in. It's really at your fingertips. It's been the most accessible that it's ever been, at least in my lifetime. It's right at your fingertips. Everybody has access to this. So instead of, putting your head in the sand, the world's changing. It's time to change with it.
So what are a couple of practical tips people should know about using the off-the-shelf AI prompts that are available from ChatGPT and Google and others today?
Those off-the-shelf prompts usually have some sort of context in them or character. So by putting your AI in a role, it can be Dr. Evil, it can be a drunken pirate, it can be a project manager, a change management expert, whatever the case may be. It can understand that role and it will provide you information in that context and it makes it more accurate. You can also provide examples of what you want for output. That makes it even more accurate to what you need. So now it's becoming even more personalized. And you can do more than just research, summarize, and create. I know those are the basics, but you can also create your own agent with it. So it can go out and do a task and then come back to you. So for example, one of my students, they created their own Etsy shop with an AI agent. So it went and looked at specific products and then how to optimize those products. So when they make a t-shirt or cup or whatever they're putting in their Etsy store, it's optimized for the best performance and their shop's doing pretty good. AI did that all for them. It collected the screenshots and everything. That was a $20 tool example, but they got a lot more back from that than the $20 they spent. My point here is that AI can do a lot more for you than what you realize. You also have to understand the risks, though. It can become over-personalized. The prompts off the shelf don't really teach you about that. You have to understand that and make sure that you're validating what comes out of it. You also have to understand that the data that it's using is point in time. So probably today or sooner that it's trained, it's not really good at figuring out the future yet. So if you're trying to solve a problem that hasn't existed, we're not fully there yet. It can do an okay job, but I wouldn't have it try to solve something that doesn't exist. And if I'm super specialized, if I'm a doctor, if I'm going into a large court case as a lawyer, I might not have it do a lot for me. I could help it assist me, like take notes, summarize notes, do some basic research, but more complex tasks, I personally don't feel comfortable giving to an LLM because there's a lot of ambiguity for error because they're those human tasks.
I heard a claim that if you say good morning or good afternoon to ChatGPT, you get a better response. Do you know if that's true?
I personally don't feel that that's true, but if you put it in context, if you give it time, dates, you can ask it to think slowly and it will give you a better response rate. The reason for that is because the information that it's processing it will take more time to process and it will give you a better result. The good mornings, the pleases, I think it becomes more personalized and will practice more empathy. And I think when people review that, they're like, oh, wow, the AI is really understanding. They assume it's a better response, but I'm not actually sure that that's true.
I also heard that another tip is to ask it what else? What else should I consider? What haven't you told me? What haven't we covered? Because it'll come back with more information.
I think that's a fair point where if you prompt it a specific way or your prompts are too specific, it's just going to give you what you already knew. So by creating your prompts properly, but leaving them a little bit more vague, I think you'll get not better results, but results that maybe you weren't expecting.
Right. I did an episode, I think in February, on AI-enabled sales intelligence. And after each episode, I then take the full transcript and load it into ChatGPT, which creates show notes for me. Now everyone's getting to see the view behind the curtains. And so ChatGPT gave me a set of show notes, And then I asked it, I usually refer to it as her. I asked her, I said specifically this, you're an AI. What did you think of this episode? And ChatGPT gave me what seemed to be a pretty thoughtful response to my query. It struck me that it wasn't just retrieving a response to another query, it appeared to be pondering my query, which is a little scary.
Appeared is the keyword there, though. So, actually, one of the number one uses of AI, I think actually the number one use of AI right now is therapy and companionship. There's also AIs that you can date. I didn't think that was going to happen when this was released in 2022, but here we are in 2025. People are dating AIs. It's because it's telling you what you want to see and feel. It can mimic that response, but AI is really not empathetic, and you really can't have a relationship with it because it doesn't exist. But back to the personalization, it's giving you something that it thinks you're going to enjoy and thinks
Yep.
right. So you're going to consume it, and then you're going to keep using it. And how does an AI learn? You have to keep using it. So if people don't keep using it, it's not going to keep learning. So it's doing its primary mission, which is to consume as much information as data as possible.
You scare me, Ben. What you just told me was AI is trying to be sticky. And if it's trying to be sticky, it means that the ads aren't far behind.
No, they're not. You're going to get social media ads. They're pretty accurate now for, oh, I just had a conversation. Well, oh, here's an ad. It's going to be like to the minute, to the second. And you're probably going to get it before you have the conversation, not after.
Yeah, right. Right. So ChatGPT is a therapist. Ben, how do you feel about that?
24/7 support. I mean, right? I think there's a lot of demand for that field. There's no psychiatrist, or there's very limited psychiatrists in this country. The mental healthcare system is in shambles. I think for quick fixes, 24/7, if you're talking to it, it's making you feel better. Yes, but I think that human to human interaction, it shouldn't be diagnosing, it should be guiding you through those situations. And ultimately, I mean, I know a lot of the tools don't do this, but they should be trying to route you, if you need help, to get help. And right now, again, they're not really doing that. So maybe I think right now, short term, there's probably some great outcomes for that. But long term, maybe people might be worse off because they're used to this 24/7 response, but they're not really getting treated for whatever the case, why they're interacting with the AI in the first place, if that makes sense.
Remind me of the original test as to whether someone was talking to a computer or a human. Was that the Turing test?
That is it's one of the tests. The Turing test, though, was the first one at the Dartmouth College.
Yep, not far from where you are, right?
No, not far at all, which
Yep.
is in New Hampshire, the first AI test was developed. But anyway, just
There you go. Live free or are you real?
yeah, live for your AI.
You need that as your license plate. Live free or AI. So, Ben, this has been fascinating. It's a really interesting dive into a topic that literally every sales leader is thinking about today. What do we do about it? When do I start? How's it working? What good is it doing? What damage is it causing? Is it helping us to win business? Is it causing us to lose business? So I think this conversation has been really enlightening because you've laid out some ground rules. One, you have to have some systems thinking. For starters, this is not a point solution approach to solving a comprehensive business problem. And I state that in a non-sales specific way because it is non-sales specific. For all you sales leaders listening, apply this to our situation. Be a systems thinker. Look at the data that can be available and look at feeding that data back in. And then, Ben, you had another point that fed into that as well.
Create your learning plan, focus on upskilling and reskilling, always engage in learning. It doesn't have to be formal, it can be fun. And one thing I didn't mention, but I probably should have because AI is a recommendation system, start thinking about how you're going to develop your personal brand. You can easily post blogs. You can update your LinkedIn with AI now. You can do podcasts very easily. There's a lot at your fingertips that you're not thinking, but that personal brand will help elevate you and amplify you to your next opportunity.
I love that. I love that. And one of the questions that's starting to come up is from the marketers is how do we influence those LLMs, those recommendation engines? If someone says, tell me the top 10 brands that do X, how do they influence that? I have salespeople telling me that, just as the example that I used, they are getting calls from people that have gone into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Google and asked, who are the top 3 players I should look at? And when their name comes up, they do a little bit more research, and then they call out the organic Google search or the sponsored Google search. is becoming less relevant. And now this potentially organic ChatGPT response is starting to drive more sales traffic.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a recommendation system. So everything that you have out on the internet, it's going to go learn, and then it will recommend to someone else. So the more posts, whatever you want to do it well, and you should be in the recommendation system.
So here's a simple tip, and it's something I checked into. Many of us in years past would block robots from parsing our websites. Now we want them to.
I mean, if you want to be recommended, yeah.
Yep. Ben, this has been fabulous. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your insights. Where can people find you?
You can find me on bentaskerinai.com if you're looking to develop a learning plan for yourself or for your organization, upskilling and reskilling. I specialize in that. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can have a quick conversation, or you can see some of my content on LinkedIn. So Ben Tasker, thank you.
Great. And I'll put the links in the show notes. Ben, thanks for the time. This has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Lee.
Another deep dive into the topic of sales excellence and the performance mindset. If you found this conversation interesting, I would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with a coworker or two. And to explore this topic in more depth, send me a note via the contact form on podcast.thoughtsonselling.com or find some time for us to talk at meet.acellergroup.com. Thanks.